we're going to walk through these steps in determining a disability. And the first step is stop and call the law firm, just what it says on the slide. I can tell you that a disability determination process usually starts with someone calling our law firm and telling us that there's been some kind of medical event that has happened. So before you take control of any assets or try to do anything else, do contact the law firm. And then I have to undergo due diligence. I have to find out if there really is a concern here about whether someone can continue to manage their own affairs. If it's a husband and wife, and the wife calls me and says that something has happened with the husband, well, I can take her word for it because I'm representing them both. They are both my clients. But it's more challenging when it's a single person or the second of a couple where there is concern that has arisen. And so if I get a phone call from a helper with regard to one of my clients, I'm going to ask, I'm going to say, I will go visit your parent or your loved one in the hospital or wherever they are to talk to them. And I'm going to ask questions like, you know, who are you and what do you own and who are your beneficiaries, and questions like that, so that I can satisfy myself as to whether or not the next step should be taken in determining disability. And so if people are, you know, talking to me pretty lucidly, then there's not a lot of concern. Now, I do recognize that when I walk into a hospital room, I do have the unique ability to kind of raise the stress level of everybody in the room, but I'm just there, as I say, to do the due diligence. I mean, you could worry about it a little bit more if I walk in with the priest, but seriously, it's just because I want to find out for myself whether there is a concern about disability. So please don't be worried or stressed at my investigation into the situation. If a client is struggling, well, then we're definitely going to reach out to the disability panel. So then I would schedule a disability conference. Most often these days, I might have one person that's in the community, but many times we have people that are scattered all over the country because Arizona is a retirement magnet state and Sierra Vista is a retirement magnet area. And so a lot of times these disability conferences are conducted by a teleconference, by phone call with speakerphone and perhaps some people being in the office and some people being elsewhere. We want to look at the totality of the circumstances. I mean, at that point, after we've had the disability conference, which generally you should allow between an hour and 2 hours, hour and a half for the disability conference, then it's going to be the job of the members on the panel to do their own due diligence, to be talking to the doctor, talking to the neighbors, talking to children, talking to the minister, anybody that would have regular contact with their loved one, and asking, you know, have you noticed anything? Has mom been struggling? Does dad taking his medication? The kinds of things that people would be concerned about. And a lot of times, especially in larger families, well, clients will try to get along as best they can for as long as they can. In a way, we say that they try to hide that they're struggling, but really it's just that what I find is people just don't want to be a burden on anyone else. That's really what it's about. I don't want to bother my son or my daughter. I know they're really busy. They've got kids, they've got jobs, they've got all kinds of things going on. I don't want to bother them. That's really what I see, is not so much that they're trying to conceal it, other than that they just don't want to be a burden on somebody. And so things may have happened that one person saw that by itself really wouldn't give rise to concern, but when you start piling it all together, when there's a number of people whose views are solicited, then there's a picture that maybe things aren't going so well. And if the panel reaches the conclusion that the client is in fact disabled, then we would have them sign certificates of disability. I used to have those signed and notarized. I've gone to signed and witnessed. I think there's a very high level of credibility that I'm just not worried about having them notarized. And besides, have you ever tried to get a doctor in front of a notary? Yeah. They don't have notaries on their team the way I do. Everybody in our office is a notary. I actually had to send a team member over to a doctor's office a few years ago to stand over the doctor while the doctor signed the certificate of disability. And this effort to get him to sign the certificate of disability went on for about 3 weeks, and it was holding up the closing on the sale of a house that the successor, in that case, successor trustee, could not act until there was the finding of disability. And so we couldn't get the house sold until that happened. So now at this point, then identification of the disability trustees needs to be done, and that's going to be in the red book. It's either going to be in Article 15 for a married couple, or it's going to be in Article 12 generally for a single person. We do have a few trusts that for one reason or another those numbers are not correct for that particular trust, but trust me, I can always find it. I know where things are in these red books, even when we have kind of the odd trust that doesn't follow our usual format. So once we've identified the disability trustees, those are the people that will then assume the financial control of the assets that are inside of the trust. Now you may recall we have some assets that may be outside of the trust, and I'm going to get to those in a minute. The disability trustee cannot control the assets that are outside of the trust, but we have a backup plan for that. But the disability trustee does step in and take control of the assets inside of the trust. And the disability trustee serves in accordance with the instructions that are in the trust, the instructions in Article 4 for the disability of the trust maker. The disability trustee does not make any medical decisions. Those medical decisions are made by the agent that is appointed under a healthcare power of attorney. Disability trustees then sign a certification of trust, which shows that they are now the people that should be in control of the assets. Once in a blue moon, really not very often, I am asked for something called an attorney certification, which is that I state that the trust is still in full force and effect, and there's no changes that have been made to it that would make any difference to this particular issue. So I've been asked for that occasionally, but not very often. Now, so the next challenge then, or step, is to locate all the assets. Well, that's usually not too hard because, as I say, we do have that process where we try to find out about all the assets at the time of the creation of the trust, and then the process to continue to have clients update the assets. So clients, that's why it is so important for you to return those asset review reports that we send out to you early in the year, usually in February, because this is the point at which someone doesn't want to have to be scrambling, looking through 3 years of income tax returns, waiting for 1099s to come in January, and trying to figure out if they know where all the assets are so that they can properly administer those assets on your behalf in the event of your disability. That's why the asset review report is, in fact, so important. The disability trustees then will need to be put into the control of the assets by having their names put on those assets instead of the trust maker as trustee of the trust. Now it's going to be the disability trustee as trustee of the trust, whose name is put on the bank accounts, the financial accounts, the car, the house, you know, everything. And we do go through a process in our office to verify that change. We're really not so concerned about things like houses and cars, but especially financial accounts where people have to be giving instructions to an advisor, for example, with regard to investments and such. We definitely want to make sure that the financial accounts have the name change put on them. And we also want to make sure that the disability trustee is coordinating with the healthcare agent. Now, in many cases, the disability trustee is the same person as the healthcare agent, but if it's not the same person as if the disability trustee and the healthcare agent are different people, it is the disability trustee that makes financial decisions, it is the healthcare agent that makes the healthcare decisions and mental health care decisions. Here in Arizona, we actually have 2 documents for healthcare. We have one for kind of regular healthcare decisions, and we have another document that is specifically for mental health care decisions. And that document becomes extremely important if someone is in the stage, one of the stages of dementia. Now, about 75% of all dementia is Alzheimer's. The other 25% is one of the other 35 or 36 different kinds of dementia that there are out there. But whichever one it is, something that, if not all of them, most of them have in common is that people will start to wander. They may wander out the door, they may wander into traffic, they may wander into the desert, they may wander a block away and not remember how to get back home anymore. So for the health, safety, and well-being of someone who is in that condition, they may need to not only be in a care facility, they may need to be in a care facility that has a locked door. The care facilities in Maricopa County that have locked doors that provide services to dementia patients starting in 2008 and accelerating pretty much 100% of them now after 2009 will refuse to admit someone to a facility if that admission is not done by an agent under a mental health care power of attorney as opposed to an agent under the regular health care power of attorney. Now, at first when I heard about that, I thought, well, why would they have that requirement, since we do have a statute that says if someone does not have an agent that's appointed under a mental health care power of attorney, that the agent under a regular health care power of attorney can make mental health care decisions for them. But when I really drilled down into the situation and took a hard look at the statute, I realized why those facilities took that position and continue to take that position. For one thing, there are 2 paragraphs in the mental health care power of attorney that have to be initialed by the principal at the same time the principal signs the document. Those 2 paragraphs are what authorize the agent to admit the principal to a facility with a locked door. The second safeguard that gets pulled into the mental health care power of attorney by reference to the statute is that even if the principal has initialed those 2 paragraphs at the same time that they signed the document, the agent still can't admit the principal to a facility with a locked door without the authorization of a doctor. And it can't just be any old general practitioner or any old doctor in the world. It has to be a doctor that has the qualifications and the expertise to make the evaluation that it is necessary to the health, safety, and well-being of the principal that they be admitted to a facility with a locked door. Those safeguards are not in the regular healthcare power of attorney. Now, when you think about it for a minute, if somebody's being admitted to a facility with a locked door, their freedom is being taken away from them. It should not be easy. There should be safeguards in place to make sure that that really is necessary to their health, safety, and well-being. Now, I have not had a problem here in Cochise County with anybody coming to me saying, I can't get my loved one into the facility they need to be in because you didn't draft a document. But I don't want that to happen. I mean, I really do think it's only a matter of time before the facilities down here wake up to the liability issue that they're facing if they admit somebody to the facility with a locked door without it being under the authorization of a mental health care power of attorney. I don't want somebody coming to me in the future saying, I can't get my loved one into the facility they need to be in because you didn't draft a document. And so I go through this in a great deal of detail with all of my clients. And since 2010, we've gone back in our client update program and made sure that everybody has gotten mental health care powers of attorney. And I've talked about it as part of the client update program. And then everybody since 2010 has been getting a mental health care power of attorney and this explanation as part of the counseling process. So I really have kind of jumped ahead of myself here a little bit in talking about this, but it was on the top of my mind because it is important. Many people have never even heard of a mental health care power of attorney, but I can tell you there's one in all of your trust makers' red books, along with the regular health care power of attorney. Now, any assets that are not owned by the trust are not controlled by the disability trustees. Sometimes the assets may not be in the trust because funding wasn't completed prior to the disability. Some assets may not have been reported to us. This hasn't happened very often, but we have had 2 situations where unfortunately people forgot about real estate. They had bought pieces of dirt 40 years ago that are located in the middle of a desert somewhere, and unfortunately in both of those cases we didn't find out about those pieces of dirt until after the trust maker had passed away and the assets triggered probate. But if we do find out about an asset that's not in the trust when someone is disabled, we do have a process to deal with that. We have a document called a funding power of attorney or special durable power of attorney, by which the trust makers can appoint somebody to get stuff into their trust if there's something that's not in the trust, or to name the trust as a beneficiary of an asset that has a beneficiary designation. Now, initially when I started in this practice, it seemed to make sense that whoever was the disability trustee could also then be the agent under this special durable power of attorney. About 5 years ago, I had a client call me up that said, my sister passed away. I wasn't expecting it, and I got $100,000. I didn't know what to do with it, so I put it in an account in my own name. Well, that was easy. She was fine. And so we just transferred that account from her name as an individual to her name as trustee of her trust and got it into her trust. But then I started thinking about it. What if my client's sister had passed away and my client was in hospice? I realized that if somebody needed to get something into a trust fast, I could probably do it faster than anybody else. And so that's the point at which I started suggesting to people that I would be willing to serve in that capacity. I have personally never had to serve as an agent under a funding power of attorney, but just this last week, one of the fellow members of the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys posted an email where he was asking, what do I do? My client signed their trust, and before they could come in for their funding appointment, the husband suffered a massive stroke. What do I need to do here? And so, of course, all of the other members of the network jumped in and said things like, get a hold of all of the financial managers immediately, explain to them the emergency nature of the situation, provide them with a copy of that funding power of attorney, that special durable power of attorney, and just work the situation and get as much into the trust as you can, as fast as you can. So that's what it's for. I haven't had to use it, but I'm a belt and suspenders attorney, and that is the kind of situation where it would definitely be useful. Now, you may recall, there are these assets that can't be owned by the trust. The retirement plans, annuities, life insurance policy, we usually don't transfer the ownership of life insurance policies to the trust. We just name the trust as a beneficiary. They still need to be managed. For that, there is an agent that's appointed under a general durable power of attorney. And that general durable power of attorney gives the helper the power to make investment decisions. The general durable power of attorney also enables whoever is the agent that's appointed, who is often the disability trustee, enables that agent to step into the trust maker's shoes, to exercise those rights that all of us have that are personal to ourselves. So if somebody had to go into a care facility, for example, and someone went down to the post office and said, I need to change that person's address so that the bills come to me now, the postmaster should say something along the lines of, well, who the heck gave you the authority to do that? Well, that authority to do things like change an address, sign income tax returns, give information to the IRS or the Arizona Department of Revenue, all of those rights that all of us have that we just don't even think about, for which we need to have someone who can step into our shoes to exercise those rights, are granted to the agent under the general durable power of attorney. Now, I'm going to digress slightly here and tell you that, unfortunately, even though my general durable powers of attorney are 25 pages long and they have everything in the kitchen sink in them, there are some entities that will not accept them. For one challenge with a general durable power of attorney is that many banks and financial institutions have an internal rule that says that they will not take a general durable power of attorney that is more than 5 years old at the time that it is first offered for use. So to solve that, to deal with that issue, every other time our clients come in to do an update, which we do every other year, so that'd be every 4 years then, we do a new general durable power of attorney. So they just don't get to be more than 5 years old for any of our clients in our practice, providing that they stay up to date on the client update program. The other challenge is that there are some institutions that will not accept them at all. And those, the most egregious offenders in that regard are plan administrators. So we advise all of our clients, and I remind all of our clients, you do need to contact plan administrators of IRAs and 401ks and find out if they have their own form. The question that can be posed to them is, will you accept a general durable power of attorney that is drafted by my attorney? Sometimes the answer is, let's see it. And once, if they're one of those that will accept it, I've never had it rejected. But in many cases, the answer is, we don't care what your attorney did. We've got our own form, and you have to get that executed in order to put somebody in charge of that tax-deferred asset, which in many cases can be one of the largest, if not the largest asset that is in the client's portfolio, are these tax-deferred assets. So it is important that those forms be obtained and that they be executed. They usually have to be notarized and filed with the plan administrators before the disability occurs, because otherwise the helper, that is the agent under the general durable power of attorney, could run into a brick wall in terms of trying to be able to manage those assets. That's not a good thing. We don't want that to happen. So, and the other issue is that sometimes, even if a plan administrator says, well, we will take the form from your attorney, they may change their mind. So this is something that does need to be investigated periodically for people that have IRAs, 401ks, assets like that. So I was going through this explanation with a client, this last spring. And he says to me, well, my wife is the beneficiary. And my response was, well, that doesn't help if you're not dead. So, because the beneficiary has no rights to the asset or managing the asset as long as the owner of the asset is alive. So this is an area where you can be good helpers by asking mom or dad or your loved one, if you have a tax-deferred asset, have you checked with that plan administrator as to whether they have their own form for a general durable power of attorney. So that's something where you can be a good advocate and help your loved ones with regard to that issue. Oh, the other entity that does not take any state-drafted documents is the federal government. So if you need to manage mom or dad's Social Security, the Social Security Administration will not take my 25 pages with everything in the kitchen sink, general durable power of attorney. They require the signing of a document that appoints a representative payee that is available online in a PDF form-filled document. I am advising clients now to sign that document before they become disabled, because Social Security will only accept the document with the owner of the Social Security funds signature. They won't accept anything else. So I don't advise that it be filed right away, but I do advise that it get signed and just leave the date open so that a date can be put in, and that should be put with the client's red book with their documents.
Form number is?
I'm sorry?
Form number?
No, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can certainly get it to you, Howard. And I should have looked at it. Thank you for reminding me. So that's another issue. And a lot of times people will say, well, I have it direct deposited to my bank account. Well, what if the bank account needs to be changed to a different bank by your agent for some reason because it's more convenient? They can't do it if they're not your representative payee. And so I am advising now, I've started doing that fairly recently because of that potential issue as well. Okay, I've talked pretty extensively about the healthcare power of attorney already and the mental health care power of attorney, giving the agent that's appointed under those documents the power to make medical decisions. And this one is never effective until the trust maker, the principal, cannot communicate their own wishes. The exceptions to that are very rare. We did have a situation in our office here just within the last few days where a client reached out because she suffered some head trauma in an accident, and she recognized that she was having difficulty making decisions for herself and actually requested that the agent under her healthcare power of attorney be able to make decisions for her immediately. And so we just did a new healthcare power of attorney for her that is effective immediately. But otherwise, the standard healthcare power of attorney that I do is only effective for the agent to make decisions when the principal cannot communicate their own wishes as to what they want for their health care. There's also an HIPAA release. HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It's an old statute. It's been around for a long time, but it had nasty penalties that were put into it that went into effect on February 1st of 2004, a little over 10 years ago. The nasty penalties provide that if a medical records keeper violates the privacy of someone whose records they are keeping, they can be fined up to $50,000 for each privacy violation. Initially, the aggregate was capped at $1 million. About 4 years ago, that was bumped up to $1.5 million. So the effect in this area is, if you don't have a HIPAA authorization, whoever you've appointed under your healthcare power of attorney or mental health care power of attorney, by federal law, is not supposed to be able to talk to your doctor or access your medical records. So we just include a HIPAA authorization as part of every set of healthcare directives we do. Well, then a few years ago, I had a client say to me, gee, does this HIPAA authorization that is here in my healthcare powers of attorney apply to the members of my disability panel? My clients ask me great questions, like Howard just did a minute ago. And every so often you get the stump the lawyer look, and that's exactly what happened there, was that the client asked me a great question, and I looked at him and I said, you know what, by golly, it doesn't. And so he was the first client in, as far as I know, in the United States to get a freestanding HIPAA authorization for his disability panel, and then that spread to other practitioners, network practitioners in Arizona, and from there it spread to the national network, and so now everybody who is a client of a member of the national network of estate planning attorneys gets a freestanding HIPAA authorization for the members of their disability panel, so that the people on the disability panel can talk to the principal's doctors and access their medical records for the purposes of determining their disability. It only makes sense. Now, the living will, what I say to clients is, if I'm in a terminal condition, a persistent vegetative state, a coma that the doctors reasonably believe to be irreversible, or have such severe dementia that I'm no longer lucid, either use every available medical procedure to continue to keep me going, or the other end of that spectrum is don't do that. So for the clients that are inclined toward the don't do that end of the spectrum, the majority of them come up from that a little bit and say, yeah, but keep me comfortable. Make sure I have whatever pain medication is necessary to keep me comfortable. Make sure I have whatever other medication is necessary to improve the quality of my life, but not prolong the process. Now, here's an area where I've recently started talking to clients more about how my living wills differ from the ones that you could go buy down that the hospitals give you, or that doctors give you, or that the forms that you can get online or whatever. The statutory format for a living will, the technical name for it is called Directive to Physicians. The people who created the model statute that about 20 years ago, from which all of the states drew the statutes that they have, they made the policy decision, the kind of paternalistic decision, that you, clients, would not want to put the burden on your loved ones of deciding when is the right time to stop treatment. They made the policy decision that they felt that people would want doctors to make that decision. Well, about 1982, I started asking clients, who do you want to make the decision as to when it's the right time to stop treatment? Do you want two doctors who you may not even know today, and you may not even know them at the time that this decision is being made, to make that decision? Or do you want the people that you've chosen as your healthcare agents to make that decision? And the response that I got from pretty much 99.9% of my clients, I can think of a couple of exceptions, but the response that I get almost uniformly is, I want the people that I've chosen to make my healthcare decisions to make that decision as to when is the right time to stop treatment. So my living wills vary in a very critical way from the statutory format, in that there's a paragraph in them that says, if a disagreement arises between my healthcare agent, my doctor, or any of my medical care providers, the directives of my healthcare agent shall control my care. Okay? That's really important for you as helpers, healthcare agents, to know that that paragraph is in there. It gives you the power to make those decisions and to stand down the doctor or a hospital if that's what you need to do to comply with what you believe is your loved one's wishes. there's another paragraph that goes right after that that says that my healthcare agent has the power to remove me from any medical facility, take me to another medical facility, or take me to another jurisdiction, if doing so, in the opinion of my healthcare agent, would comply with my wishes. That's very powerful. That means that you can check someone out of a medical facility against medical advice if doing so, in your opinion, will comply with the wishes of your loved one. There is also the organ donation form. If someone has decided to be an organ donor, we have 5 different levels of organ donation that would be on that organ donation form, and it's also set out in the healthcare power of attorney as well. Now, you may be sitting here thinking, wow, I've got a lot of responsibility on my shoulders if I'm a healthcare agent. And so you may be thinking, you know, how do I know what mom or dad would want? Well, that's where these documents that are in the Helper's Handbook come into play. So the set of documents that starts out letter of instructions to my healthcare agent is very comprehensive. It has instructions for family members, instructions for my healthcare agent with respect to medical records, choice of physicians, medical tests, medications, healthcare facility and long-term care preferences, institutional care. And then we also have the hypothetical scenario analysis form that says if I'm in this condition with regard to these possible treatments, the first column is that could be checked is I want the treatment. The second column, it might be a treatment that's not applicable, but if it is applicable, the principal can check, I want treatment. If no clear improvements, stop the treatment. Then there's a column that says I'm undecided, and the last one says I do not want the treatment. So the reason that we give you a copy of those documents in the Helper's Handbook is so that you know what issues are addressed by those documents, and so we can enlist you to bug your loved ones and say, have you filled out those documents that were given to you with the Helper's Handbook? If you have filled them out, where are you keeping them? And oh, by the way, is there anything you would like to talk to me about to clarify, to make sure that I know what it is that you would want in the event that you can't express those decisions for yourself? Now, I can tell you that in our process previously, until about 6 months ago, we were giving people those documents, the Helper's Handbook, on the same day that we had delivered to them their big red book. Well, that didn't work too well, because by the time we get done with this thing, it's 3.5 hours, they're on information overload, their eyes are glazed over, and then I'm telling them that they've got these important documents in this white book that they need to fill out. So guess what was happening? Wasn't getting done. So what we've started doing now within the past few months is we're giving those specific documents to people much earlier in our process. When they sign the engagement letter with us, the next thing they get is homework, those documents. That gives me the opportunity when they come back in for their design for me to bug them and say, have you filled those out? Remember, if you get them filled out before you come in to sign your documents, we can get them signed up that day and we'll scan them into our system so that we've got copies of them too. And if they don't get it done by the time of delivery, then when they come in for funding, then Paulette can bug them and say, did you get those done? Was that taken care of when you came in for the delivery of your documents? So that gives us like 3 cracks at making sure they get done. So we're getting much better compliance with getting that done. But ask your loved ones, did you fill it out? If you filled it out, where are you keeping it? So that you can get those if they're needed. Because you do have a lot of responsibility, and having those documents will help you in fulfilling that responsibility. Now, another way to help you is that if for some reason it's out of state, there's traveling or something like that, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, it's an emergency, you don't know where the red book is exactly, but even if you did know, going and getting it would be a problem, well, then we have another backup. It's called DocuBank. All of our clients are enrolled with DocuBank, and that means that we send their documents to DocuBank. They're healthcare directives, and those directives can be accessed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year using this card. Everyone gets this card and it goes into their wallet. Healthcare providers can access their healthcare directives 24/7, 365. So that fills a gap that I felt that we had in our practice, which is that although we've always provided the service of faxing, in some cases I have hand-carried healthcare directives over to the Sierra Vista Regional Healthcare Center, we're not open 24/7, 365. And I always worried that clients would need their documents at 2 o'clock in the morning on a holiday weekend when none of us was around. So DocuBank fills that gap. It not only gives my clients peace of mind, it gives me peace of mind that my clients' needs are going to be taken care of even if I'm not available. Now, be a good advocate. Ask your loved one, have you gone on the DocuBank website to make sure that your account is activated? And so that's something that you can do to help your loved one. So I have found that sometimes people haven't gone on to activate, but I can tell you that if you know the email address and you know the password, you can get in. But if they haven't put another password in, their 5-digit zip code will be the default password under DocuBank. I recently learned that, so I wanted to go ahead and share that with you. If you are the advocate at the hospital, be a good advocate and insist that the hospital contact DocuBank to get copies of the healthcare directives. If we've gotten the forms filled out of the healthcare checklist and hypothetical scenario, that will also be on file with DocuBank as well. So as a healthcare agent, your job would be to provide copies of the healthcare documents. Do not give them originals. Make sure that they get only copies. And then follow the instructions on the healthcare checklist and hypothetical scenarios. Coordinate with the disability trustees. Check for long-term care insurance policies or disability insurance policies. And frequently we know about those, so check with our office as well. We often know about any such policies. And if you have questions, call us. We don't charge for phone calls, because if we charge for phone calls, people wouldn't call us. And we want people to call us. So call us. So now we're going to take a break and we're going to just hold on. Paulette is reminding me. Well, that went easier than I thought it would. I'm so glad that we all went to that class that Mom's lawyer had about what to do if Mom became disabled. I'm so glad we knew how to get a hold of them, and they took care of everything right away.
Me too, and the doctor and I signed the disability certificate, so we have things in order so that we can take care of Mom and her finances. Jean, I know that you're going to be able to take care of Mom because you have her health care powers of attorney.
Yes, I do, and I've already talked with Mom's docs and about her care, and of course, I'm going to keep you all in the loop.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are you going to be going to the lawyer's office?
Oh yes, on Monday they're going to provide a certificate for me so that I can go to the bank and be able to sign checks and get her accounts in order there. And I'm also going to be able to meet with a financial advisor on Monday and be able to take care of those investments.
Oh, good.
Great, great.
Good.
Mm-hmm. I've also talked to the neighbor that Mom made arrangements with for Daisy.
Oh, good. For the dog. Good, good.
They are all ready. Paulette, they know to contact you
Very good.
about getting some money for her food and any veterinarian care.
Okay.
And they're all ready to go. If it turns out that Mom can't come back home, Mom made arrangements for them to take her. They really like her.
Okay.
Well, what's not to like?
Yeah.
She's such a beautiful dog.
But for now, she'll stay here at the house.
Okay.
Okay, that's really good to hear. That's a relief. I'm her agent, Mom's agent, under the power of attorney too, and I'll take a copy of it to the post office so that I can have Mom's mail forwarded to me. I'm going to forward any bills that may come to me in your direction,
Very
Paulette,
good. Thank you.
so that you can get them paid. And I'll be going down and talking to her accountant too, because tax time's coming up. Because we do need to get her income tax returns prepared. Paulette, I may need a little help from you on that because I don't know where the records are.
Sure. Any help you need on that, and I'd be glad to help you. And Mom told me where the tax records are.
Oh, good, good.
I'll make sure that you have them.
Okay, great. I'm so glad to hear that. Are you also going to contact Mom's insurance agent regarding the house and the car?
Yes, I'll take care of that too.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I've got to contact Medicare, and I'll contact the insurance policy, the pickup policy as well, to make sure that her hospital bills are paid as well. So I'll take care of that.
Well, this is such a relief. If anyone needs any help, just let me know. We can all work together to help Mom and take care of her and her finances. Okay.